Hello and welcome to ONET Academy. This previously recorded webinar is part of the ONET Academy webinar series, a set of online training presentations. This webinar recording, the Introduction to the ONET Ability Profiler, will start momentarily.
And while everyone's doing that, I'd like to turn things over to today's presenter, Dr. Wall. Janet?
Okay, Gary, thanks an awful lot. I appreciate it. And I do want to reiterate to please keep your phones on mute. Basically, if there's any noise around your desk or your office area, the rest of us can hear it, and it gets a bit distracting if it gets too loud. Welcome, everybody. I'm Janet Wall, and I am a consultant to Mayor & Mayor. I have been doing these webinars, developing and delivering them for probably about 5 years now on a variety of different topics. What you're going to be experiencing today is the first part of a 3-part series that we're doing focusing on the ability profiler. If you attend all 3 sessions, then you will get a certificate of completion. However, if you are not able to do that and you can only attend 1 or 2 sessions, just be assured that each session stands on its own, and you are not required to attend all 3 by any means, and you ought to be gaining information even if you attend just 1. But if you attend all 3, and the first one is today, an introduction to the ONET tools, the Ability Profiler. Then Thursday, how to administer the Ability Profiler. And then a week from Thursday, how to interpret the Ability Profiler. And as Gary mentioned, this webinar is going to be recorded, and it will be posted on onetacademy.com by close of business tomorrow. So if you want to listen to the webinar again or have colleagues that would like to do that, by all means, they can do that by going to the recorded webinar section. And also these PowerPoint slides are going to be made available as well. So if you want to do some additional training or have the PowerPoint slides on file, you can get them from onetacademy.com. So, I have several objectives that I would like for us to focus on for the next 45 minutes to an hour. And what I want to do is review just quickly the 3 instruments that are part of the ONET assessment package. This is part of whole person assessment. We're going to kind of skim over 2 of them and focus more detail on the Ability Profiler. So more detail on the Ability Profiler will be provided. I want to talk about some administration options. I want to outline just in general the scoring process. I want to talk about the types of scores that are provided for the individualized score report and show how you can use the results with the ONET database. And I want to also mention to you a slew of additional support materials and products that you can download and have at the ready. Okay, again, I want to remind people to please mute your phones or at least cover the phones so that we don't hear the background noise. I can certainly hear some background noise from someone's telephone. All right, 3 instruments, part of the ONET assessment package. First one being the ONET Interest Profiler. Second one, the ONET Work Importance Locator or Profiler. And then the Ability Profiler. All right, I want to kind of give you the lay of the land of these 3 tools. The ONET Interest Profiler is a paper-pencil instrument, and it measures work-related interests. It has a companion that is a computerized version. What you do is you can go to onetcenter.org, and you can actually download the executable file and put the program on your computer if you download the standalone version. Or if you are working in an area where you have a set of network computers, you can download the network version. I do want to mention and clarify that this is not Internet delivered and stored. This is an actual executable program that you download onto your machine, and it receives the information from a test taker, and it will score the assessment and provide the results. but it's from your computer or your computer network, not from the Internet. Both of those instruments measure work-related interest. Then we have the Work Importance Locator, which is a paper-pencil instrument. It is actually a card sort, which is kind of a fun instrument to do. It measures job values, well, what's important in a job. It has a companion called the Work Importance Profiler, and it, too, is something that you can download from onetcenter.org and install on your computer or in your network system. It measures also job values. Now, the instrument of particular interest for today is the ONET Ability Profiler, and it measures work-related abilities, or what an individual can do well. It is only a paper-pencil instrument. You can download from onetcenter.org all the files and the reports related to that instrument, but it is not a program that you download and put onto your computer. It is just a series of files that will allow you to print out the actual test booklet, the answer sheet, and other related materials. So it's different in that capacity. Now, just a brief look at the Interest Profiler. The Interest Profiler is designed to measure Holland's vocational personality theory. And his theory is that people and occupations can be kind of divided up or described according to 6 different categories. And if you have interests, if you're working in occupations that kind of satisfy your interests, then you are basically happier, you're more productive, and you'll stay on the job longer. And so the areas that are measured in the Interest Profiler are what are called realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. The Work Importance Locator or Profiler also measures 6 different areas, and these are achievement, independence, recognition, relationships, support, and working conditions. And it follows the same kind of concept, that if you are working in a job or in an occupation where your values are satisfied, then you will be happier, more productive, and you'll stay on the job longer. Now, the instrument we're going to be focusing on today is, of course, the Ability Profiler, and it is made up of 11 separate subtests, and they are listed: arithmetic reasoning, vocabulary, 3-dimensional space, computation, name comparison, object matching, mark making, place, turn, assemble, and disassemble. Now, these 11 subtests can be described or categorized in several different ways, and we're going to focus on 2 of them. One is, first, power tests and speeded tests. Power tests are those where there is sufficient time given to complete all of the items for most people that are taking the assessment. So it's basically a way of trying to capture how much people know about a particular content area. Speeded tests, on the other hand, are a little bit different. There's not sufficient time to complete all of the items because the speeded tests are checking to see how fast and accurately you can do certain tests or answer certain items. And so those areas that are in the pink, arithmetic, reasoning, vocabulary, and 3-dimensional space, are the power tests, while those in green are the speeded tests. There's also a second major way to describe these assessments: non-psychomotor and psychomotor. Non-psychomotor assessments are pretty similar to the kinds of assessments we've taken in high school, or sort of like the SATs or ACTs. They really ask us to use our brain power. They're more academic kinds of assessments. The psychomotor assessments, on the other hand, use our bodies, our hands, our fingers. So it's more the brawn part of the assessment. So we have the non-psychomotor, which are the academic brain power, and the psychomotor, which is the brawn or the physical aspects that are being looked at or measured. So power tests, speeded tests, non-psychomotor, psychomotor. So just, again, a little review. The power test, sufficient time is given for most people to complete all of the items, and the basic intent is to see how much a person knows. The speed test, how quickly and accurately a person can answer the items or perform the test. One of the things I really like about the ONET instruments are the amazing amount of support materials that are provided. What you see here is a picture of a few of the documents that relate to the ability profiler, but all of the assessment instruments have just a slew of documents that support the use of that particular assessment. You can download all of this, again, off of the onetcenter.org website. So you don't really need, in essence, the paper copies if you have the file copies, or you can download print versions where you can actually go to a printer and create more copies of each of the assessments. I want to focus on some of the documents for the ability profiler. We have, again, kind of two categories, one for the administration of the assessment and one for the test taker. And I just got a question, what is mark making? And mark making is a psychomotor assessment that requires a person to make a certain number of marks within a square and see how fast and accurately they can do it. I will cover that. We'll cover all of the subtests in Thursday's session, which is how to administer. And I really focus on the items and what they look like and how to deal with the items and the special administration directions for many of the items. So come back, whoever asks the question, come back on Thursday and you'll get more comprehensive answer to that question. All right, so administration documents and documents for the test taker. For the administration end of things, there is a user's guide, which is something that I recommend you read before actually administering the ability profiler. It gives some background on how the instrument was developed and why it was developed, by whom. It also gives an idea of the kinds of items that are on the assessment, gives some basic reliability and validity information. So it's kind of a general overview document. Then there's the administration manual. And the administration manual is kind of the Bible of what you're supposed to be doing as you administer the assessment to another individual or group. The administration manual has the exact words that you are supposed to use when you administer the ability profiler. It has the timing in it. It has sample items. It has everything you need to say in order to properly administer the ability profiler to others. These next three items, record of apparatus scores, three-dimensional space cutouts, and automated scoring software, I'm going to park, and we will discuss those on Thursday in much more detail. These are things that relate to the administration of the assessment. I will, however, just briefly talk about the automated scoring software. Now for the test taker, we have the actual test booklet, which is Ability Profiler Form 1, a tool for career exploration. In addition to that, we have the answer sheet. So what a test taker would do is they would have the test booklet, which includes all the items that they need to answer, and they would complete the answer sheet by filling in the bubbles that would actually indicate what they believe is the correct answer. There's also a mark-making answer sheet, which, again, I will focus on Thursday. Then there's the report that is generated as a result of taking the assessment and actually getting it scored. And we'll look at that a little bit today, but we will look at it in more detail a week from Thursday in the third session. And there's the apparatus for the dexterity test, which are the manipulatives that one uses before of the assessment. Now, the development of the ability profiler was really very methodically done. There is a document that all good test producers follow as they develop an assessment. These are professional testing standards that are agreed upon by psychometricians and test developers. These are produced by the American Psychological Association, the National Council on Measurement and Education, and the American Educational Research Association. So the Department of Labor did follow those professional testing standards in the development process. Part of that is what is called a fairness evaluation, and that is both a word review to see if there are any words or phrases that are negatively influencing a person's ability to answer the questions. And also there are statistical reviews that one does to check to see how good an item is, how well it's working, and whether or not there's bias in any particular way against a subgroup. There's also many research studies to show that the ability profiler has validity for certain functions, and also there's evidence of reliability as well. Now, one of the things that has been produced that I really like, and we will focus a little bit on this today, but mostly a week from Thursday in the third session, and that is the self-interpreted score report, which actually provides a profile of the individual's results and matches it up to profiles of occupations so that one can see which occupations seem to be most similar to the individual. And there's also links to ONET occupations as well. So it really facilitates opening up the doors to career exploration. All right, the use of the ability profiler, it's developed only for career exploration and career counseling. It's not to be used. The results should not be used for job selection or selection into job training programs. You could administer the assessment to one person or to a group of persons. And again, the ability profiler comes only in paper pencil format. It is not a computerized version. So what's measured by the ability profiler? Well, several different areas are measured. One is verbal ability, and that's how well you understand words and can use them in good communication, be it listening, speaking, or writing. And verbal ability is measured by the vocabulary subtest. And then there's arithmetic reasoning. These are kind of like the word problems that we get in middle school and high school and beyond. So it's solving problems in everyday situations. Arithmetic reasoning is measured by the arithmetic reasoning subtest. Computation. Computation is really addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Simple problems along that line, so they're number problems as opposed to word problems. Computation is measured by the computation subtest. Then there's spatial ability, and this is basically you're measuring one's ability to see a three-dimensional object from a view of two dimensions. And so it's really trying to see how well you can develop pictures of things in your mind and trying to understand how various parts fit together. So spatial ability is measured by the three-dimensional space subtest. Form perception, and this is basically how quickly and accurately you can see details in pictures of things. Clerical perception is the same kind of concept but in printed material. So form perception is measured by object matching. Clerical perception is measured by name comparison. And again, a lot of this will come more clear to you as we work through Thursday's session, which is really how to administer the profiler. All right, so what is measured? Again, motor coordination. And this is how quickly and accurately you can coordinate your eyes with your hands and fingers to make precise movements. And that is measured by mark making. Manual dexterity, which is moving your hands easily and skillfully, and that's measured by two subtests, one called place and one called turn, and then finger dexterity, how fast you can and skillfully you can move your fingers. And that's also measured by two subtests, one called assemble and one called disassemble. And again, on Thursday, we'll show sample items, and we'll show pictures of the manipulatives and the psychomotor assessments so you get a really good feel on what you need to do to administer those psychomotor assessments, because they are quite different from the kinds of assessments that we've had in grammar school, high school, and college. All right, you have some administration options. Option 1 is to administer all 11 subtests, and that takes about 2.5 hours. And you do this if you or the client needs information about all the ONET occupations, including those that require psychomotor. There's a second option, which is to use the 6 paper, pencil, and mark-making assessments. That's 7 tests, and it takes about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And it's used if you need information about occupations, but not about those that require manual dexterity or finger dexterity, but do require motor coordination. And option 3 are the 6 paper pencil tests, no psychomotor assessments, and that's used when information is not needed about occupations that require any of the psychomotor skills, such as motor coordination, manual dexterity, or finger dexterity. Now, your decision as to what option to use really is, what does the client or the student need? How broad do you want the career exploration to be? Do you want it to include the psychomotor assessments or not? And so between you and the client or you and the student, that decision can be made. All right, there is another requirement, which is an administrator-examinee ratio. And for parts 1 through 6, which are the paper-pencil assessments, you need 1 administrator for every 10 people and 1 assistant for every additional 10 examinees. So if you have 11 people that are taking the test in a single group, you need 1 administrator and 1 assistant. For parts 7 through 11, which are the psychomotor assessments, you need more people to be able to assist and to observe what's happening. So we need 1 administrator for every 5 examinees and 1 assistant for every additional 5 examinees. So if you have 11 people in the group this time, you need 1 administrator and 2 assistants. And if you are familiar with the psychomotor assessments and have seen them, you can fully understand why you need more people to kind of watch and assist. If you don't know about the psychomotor assessments, join us on Thursday, and you'll be able to see why it requires a little more help from others. All right, more on the administration basics. The ability profiler is a standardized test, and that means the administration directions, the timing, everything needs to be followed exactly. So you take that administrator manual and you do not deviate from what that manual says. You have to give the test in a particular order, with particular timing, with particular words. The power tests are given before the speeded test. The paper pencil tests always come before the psychomotor test. So you don't have the authority to change it around. And this is basically an issue of fairness, because if one gave one person or one group more time or less time than others, then the results would be invalidated. They wouldn't be helpful to the individual. Additionally, the testing environment is important as well. Basically, what you want to do is provide an environment where the test taker has the opportunity to perform their very best. So you don't have the test going on when there's a jackhammer outside the building, fire alarms, any kind of distractions. You want a place that's comfortable, well-lit, quiet, well-ventilated. So again, the idea is the person has every opportunity to perform their best on the assessment. There's some examinee requirements as well. The examinee needs to be at least 16 years old. They need to read English at least the 6th grade level. They've not taken the test for the past 6 months, and that's to eliminate the practice effect. And the practice effect basically is if you take an assessment too often, you start remembering the answers to the questions rather than figuring out the answers in a kind of a fresh way. So the result is not really a valid result. So people in various research studies have found that if you wait about 6 months, preferably more, between assessments, then a person would face the test in a fresh way, not remembering the answers that they came up with in previous assessments. And another requirement is that everyone needs to be treated the same, with the same respect, the same timing, and in the most fair way possible. The only exception to that is for persons with documented disabilities. And there are some accommodations that you can give for persons with documented disabilities, but they are somewhat limited. One of the things you can change is the timing of the test, but not on all the subtests. You can only extend the time for the power test, and that's parts 1, 2, and 3, which is arithmetic, reasoning, vocabulary, and three-dimensional space. You cannot change the timing on the speeded test. And I hope that makes some sense because, again, the power test... Thank you, Gary. The power tests are such that, again, ample time is given so that just about everybody taking the assessment can complete all of the items. On the speeded test, that's not true. The speeded tests are those where limited time is given, and the whole notion is how fast and accurately you can perform the test. So giving a little extra time for persons with disabilities on the power assessments does not invalidate the scores. Now, clearly, if it's a 10-minute test and you give them 4 hours to complete it, I'm not sure how valid the end result would be. But a little extra time does not really hurt the validity of the power test. But for some of the speeded tests, some of the tests are like 10 seconds long. And so if you give someone an extra 5 seconds of time, that's a humongous increase in the amount of time for that particular test. Print size. You can increase the point size for the power test and also for name comparison. So the letters can be bigger if you need to have that done, someone with a visual disability. Then directions. You can and should encourage examinees to ask as many questions as they can in order for them to understand how they should approach each of the subtests. Now, for example, some of the subtests have a penalty for guessing, so they need to know that kind of information. They need to know the kinds of items that they're going to be answering. But this is not the time to start teaching mathematics or to start teaching vocabulary or anything along that line. It's not the time to be teaching content, but again, make sure that the individuals understand what they need to do on the assessment itself. So however long it takes to explain is what should be required. All right, you can do other accommodations as well, as long as the test is measuring job-related abilities, not the disability. So you can do things like provide assistance with the answer sheet. You can do steadying or locking down a wheelchair in order for the person to be able to manipulate the object a little easier. Now, a lot of this whole notion of accommodations is a judgment call. You always have to think about what you're doing and how it affects the validity of the results. And if it affects the validity of the results, it's not a proper accommodation. There are there's so much to know about this whole area. And again, a lot of it is judgment call. I have 2 resources listed that may help you in making a better judgment call. The first is a document called Pre-Employment Testing and the ADA. And I have that posted on my own website, which is listed there, www.home.earthlink.net/Stage Solutions. And if you go to the section called Free Downloads, you can actually pick up that document and download it. It's a very, in my view anyway, very user-friendly, very, very clear document, about 8 pages long, and it gives you a general idea of how various accommodations affect the validity of test results. And then if there are any of you that want a whole lot more detail, I would suggest a book that is sold by American Psychological Association called Assessing Individuals with Disabilities in Educational, Employment, and Counseling Settings. And again, it's a book, so there's a lot of information in there, and a number of professionals have looked at this whole issue of accommodations in a variety of different ways, all the way from validity issues to legal issues and so on. All right, Gary, if you can unmute the phones. I want to stop to see if there are any questions that anyone has.
Sure, Janet. I'll be unmuting the phones now. Remember, if you don't have a question or comment for Janet, please remember to keep your phone lines muted. If you don't have a mute feature, please try to keep any background noise down to a minimum. Okay, phone lines have been unmuted.
Thank you, Gary.
Janet, I had a question. This is Mary Ann. I'm at Assumption College, and I work on a grant that provides training for the public voc rehab counselors that are working with people who have disabilities. And one of the areas that has come to my attention is that in working with people who are blind and who use JAWS screen readers in order to access information. And I was just wondering, are the power tests that are available through the Ability Profiler, would an individual be able to read those with a JAWS screen reader? Is that something you would know the answer to?
Yeah, I believe so. Because actually you can pull up the files on a computer and have JAWS read it right from there.
In terms of then answering, I guess that I'm wondering.
I would think, and probably you're very well versed in this. I would think that probably having someone actually fill out the answer sheet for them might be the way to go.
I guess I could experiment with it and see how it would work. I know that has been one of the criticisms. I'm a big fan of all of the career exploration tools through ONET, and I've done training around them for VR personnel. And that's the one criticism that comes up whenever I'm working with blind or visually impaired users, is that they're difficult to use to interface.
Yeah. And the seated test would be extremely difficult to be able to administer to a visually impaired person.
Yes, yes. Is this something that, would you be open to specific feedback about these tools if I could provide that from a blind user?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And what I would do then is forward it to the appropriate Department of Labor folks, because they're the ones that actually create the instrument, create the policies around it.
And who would that be? Can I find that on the website or?
Well, yeah, there's actually, again, if you forward it to me, I can make sure it goes to the right person. But there is also an email address on onetcenter.org, and I think it's something like customer service.
Okay. I'll
you'll be able to find it. I know it's pretty prominent on their website, but I think it's customer service at I think it's ncmail.org. If I'm not mistaken, but don't. I'm just going by memory.
And the Department of Labor would be the folks that would actually make any changes to the programs in order to make them more accessible.
Yeah,
what you're saying.
The stuff is developed out of the North Carolina office, but the policies, of course, are at the headquarters, along with the other agencies. But again, if you want to send it to me, I'll make sure that it gets to the proper person, or at their website, find that customer service email, and you'll get. I have used it myself, and they do respond back to you.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Sure. All right. I have a question from Janet Park. What's the lowest reading level that can take this test? Well, we talked about it. You really need to be able to read at a 6th grade level in order to take the assessment, because of the level of vocabulary utilized. Any other questions? We have more to cover, but I know we've been covering a lot of information, and I just want to pause and see if you need to have anything clarified or want to make a contribution. Okay, let me push on then, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and one we sort of just answered. What's the minimum age for taking the Ability Profiler? Is it 14, 16, or 18?
16.
16, very good. All right. And the next question, can the Ability Profiler be used for recommending a client for an available job?
No.
All right, very good. That's perhaps the most important question.
Yeah.
For a person with physical disabilities, the test administrator can give the individual a reasonable amount of time that he or she needs on the psychomotor test. Yes or no?
No.
All right, very good. That's exactly the right answer. Okay, the psychomotor tests are speeded, and you're not authorized at all to give extra time. I mean, you can do it, but you don't know how to interpret the results. And that's the basic thing. You can't really use the end result if you modify the administration directions for the speeded test. All right, scoring. There are a bunch of materials for scoring the Ability Profiler, and I have these listed under AP materials. You can download all of these off of the onetcenter.org website. Here are some of the equipment and software requirements. There's certain scanning equipment and software that is supported. All the information about the scoring is included in the Scoring Program User's Guide, which you can download. And I will just in brief contend with this slide, which is you use the scoring program, you scan in the answer sheets, you get a file. That file interacts with the scoring program, and out of that comes an individualized score report. And we'll take a look at what a score report looks like, at least in general. This is kind of a schematic on the scoring process. And I won't go into this in a whole lot of detail, but you have the scanning software. You have what's called the response sheet definition file, which basically tells the scanning software where to find the correct answers. And that interacts with the scanner, so you actually scan in the bubble answer sheets. That interacts with the scanning software and creates what's called an examinee information file. So that's a file then of information on each person, which interacts with the scoring software, and as a result then creates an individualized score report for each person. And that score report can be printed, put in someone's file, printed and given to the individual test taker, or you can even email it to the individual, and you can file it electronically as well. All right, other scoring support. If you are actually administering the Ability Profiler to lots of people across time, it is probably a very good idea to actually get the scoring software and the scanner all set up. If you're just doing 1 or 2 people a month or something along that line, not using the ability profiler in a huge way, you can use the hand data entry program that's been developed, and that's available, again, for downloading from onetcenter.org. If you don't want to set up the scanning and scoring program and want someone else to do it, you can use private sector scoring, and there's some contact people there that you can utilize. Again, information on that can be found on onetcenter.org website. So it depends on the volume, it depends on how fast you want the results and so on as to how you decide to score it. Now, interpreting the ability profiler score report, remember, only for career exploration, not for job selection or selection into job training programs, and it matches the examinee's profile on the assessments to occupational profiles. And then on top of that, we use job zones in the matching process. And I suspect that those of you that are familiar with ONET are also familiar with job zones, but we'll go over what that means in just a bit. This is an example, a screenshot of a portion of the score report. So there's some general preliminary information, but it does say that the results must not be used for employment or hiring decisions, so that's put right on the score report. The person gets information on how they actually scored on the assessment, so you have the areas that are measured, verbal ability, arithmetic, reasoning, computation, and so on. You get the person's percentile, and then you get the number of questions correct over the number of total questions. And then again, each person gets 5 profiles or 5 listings of occupations where their profile on the ability profiler results matches up with the occupation's profile. And so here, this is sort of an indication that there are multiple profiles. So I have 3 of them shown on the screen, but there are actually 5 that are given to the person, and it's one set of occupations for each job zone. And so job zone is the amount of education, training, and experience that is generally required by persons who are working in that occupation. It goes from job zone 1, which is the lowest level or the least amount of education, training, and experience, all the way through job zone 5, which is the highest level. So job zone 1, little or no preparation needed. And so education requirements might be a high school diploma or GED. No skill or previous work-related knowledge or experience is needed for these occupations. Job training is a few days to a few months. Some example occupations are bus drivers, general office clerks, home waiters, waitresses, and so on. Job zone 2, some preparation is needed, and so the amount of education, training, and experience is a little bit higher than job zone 1. So sample occupations would be drywall installers, fire inspectors, flight attendants, pharmacy technicians, etc. Job zone 3, medium preparation. So again, a little bit higher. Dental assistants, electricians, fish and game wardens, legal secretaries. Job zone 4, considerable preparation needed. So several years of work-related experience on the job training and vocational training, 2 to 4 years of work-related skill, knowledge, or experience. Most require a 4-year bachelor's degree, but some do not. Examples are accountants, chefs and head cooks, computer programmers, historians, police detectives, etc. And then job zone 5, extensive preparation is needed. And the occupations in this category are generally those that a person is already in the profession. They already has the degree, already has passed the various tests, already has gone through internships or whatever to become that particular occupation. So you have lawyers. Lawyers have gone through a law degree. They've gone past the bar before they can become, in quotes, a lawyer. Same kind of thing with instrumental musicians. You don't put a person like me into an orchestra and say, okay, now become a professional musician. And if you don't have the background and training already, you're not going to get into that professional orchestra. Same thing with physicists and surgeons. You wouldn't want a person without training to try their hand at surgery, especially on you, if they haven't had the proper background already to be able to perform that job. So Job Zone 1 is the lowest, Job Zone 5 is the highest. And each person who takes the ability profiler gets a listing of occupations in each of those 5 job zones that match up with their profile. And I like that because it really facilitates good career exploration. It really provides a person the whole set of options that are out there, regardless of the amount of education, training, and experience that they have or might want to have at some point in time. All right, so what one would do, and we'll see this in more detail in the subsequent sessions, that once a person gets a listing of occupations and they make a selection of some occupations that they want to learn about more, they would go to online.onetcenter.org, which is the user-friendly version of the ONET database, and they can find just hundreds of pieces of information on each of the occupations to include tests, knowledge, skills, abilities, interests, work setting, and so on. They can also get the occupational outlook at the national level and for the state that they're interested in. They can find additional links and resources. It's a real wealth of information for someone who is pondering what to do, what occupation to get into. I want to also make sure that for those of you that have not poked around onetcenter.org, I think it would be well worth your while if you're going to do anything with these assessment instruments or with the occupational information to spend half an hour, 45 minutes on this website and just see what's there. Because at some point in time, you're going to be asked a question, you're going to come up with a question that you don't have the answer to, but you'll know where on this website to go and get the answer. It is extremely comprehensive. It is extremely detailed. Almost anything, well, anytime I've had a question, I have found the answer on this website. And so spend a little time, see what's there. It's not only information on the assessment instruments, but on the ONET system as well. I want you also to know that in addition to having this webinar archived and the PowerPoint slides available, we also have provided on onetacademy.com a self-assessment quiz. And it's not for certification or anything like that. It's just for your own knowledge and professional development. You can take this short quiz, and if you get an answer wrong, what it does is it gives you a page number within the support document that you can go to get the right answer. Thank you, Gary. And so you can then learn from your incorrect answers what the correct answer should be. In addition, there is a downloadable Lunch and Learn training packet. It includes PowerPoint slides and a list of frequently asked questions and administrator's checklist, what to do before, during, and after administering the ability profiler. And then what I like in there is scenarios that we've developed, things that possibly could happen, situations that could occur when you're thinking about administering the ability profiler. And then you and your colleagues would discuss the answer, and then you would compare it to what's called the ideal answer that is provided as part of this Lunch and Learn training packet. In addition, we do lots of live webinars, a lot of them focused on the assessment tools, but also on the ONET system and the older worker, the ONET tools and the military person in transition, the ONET tools and the job seeker, ONET tools and the school counselor and student. There's also one that I've developed on the relationship between occupations, education, and pay. So kind of be on the lookout for these various webinars, and if you see one of interest to you, by all means, sign up for it. And I do want to remind you again that there is a session on Thursday, which is how to administer the ability profiler, and then a week from Thursday on how to interpret the results. So at this point, I want to stop and see again if you have any questions. any kind of comment that you'd like to make, contribution of information about how you've used the Ability Profiler, your needs, or whatever. So, Gary, if you can unmute the phone, we'll see what happens.
Maybe, but if it's specific.
So if anyone has any questions, we've got the phone line unmuted. So if you have a question, unmute your phone and let us hear it.
I never did.
Janet?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, when you were talking about the scoring, the various ways you could score it, do you need a scanner if you want to get the downloadable software? It was talking about in that little schematic where you showed the whole process. Was that a scanner that you had hooked up to the computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, there are several different ways that you can actually do the scoring. If you have a lot of volume and you want to do it in your location, using the scoring program, the downloadable scoring program, and the scanner and so forth is, I would think, the best way to go. Mm-hmm. If you just have a few, use the hand data entry, and then if you don't need the stuff, if you don't want to set up a scoring system in your location, and you have a volume, then it might be best to get outside scoring done and pay for that scoring.
Okay.
So those are the basic three options that are available.
And is there still room in the next Thursday's class? You mentioned there would be the second session would be next Thursday.
Yeah, I believe so. Gary, how can they sign up for that?
Well, all you need to do is visit the ONET Academy registration page, the same page that you visited to register for this webinar, and you'll see that you'll see the link for registration on that page as well. And all you need to do is click on the link and enter in, I believe, your email address, and you'll receive the login and dial-in information the day before the actual session. So tomorrow afternoon, I suppose.
Oh, it's this Thursday, right? Oh, okay. I knew there was a reason I hadn't signed up for it. I was looking at next Thursday, the 15th. Okay. And today's only Tuesday.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Dr. Wall, I had a question regarding the background research on this test. I want to find out where I can go to find out some more information about that as far as the sample group and reliability and validity of the test.
Yeah, you go to onetcenter.org and go to the part that deals with the assessments, and there will be, I'm not even sure how many reports are on the website at this point in time, but there's a whole bunch of them. And what I would start with is the user's guide, and that'll give you the kind of the basic layman's information, and then go then to the specific reports, the technical reports that are there, and they're all there for your downloading.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. I enjoyed having you in the webinar. I hope that the information has been useful to you, and I also hope I see you in subsequent webinars. Take care and have a great day.